Welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Brandon, and today we're doing something a little different today. Today we're doing a budget deck for Fate. Yes, that's right. Tier 0 Fate, 0 Day Sense. We're looking at Fate in 2023. Now, especially if you've looked around at Fate and have been a little sticker shocked by the price tag of Fate itself, especially looking at cards from Heaven's Feel 1, or even earlier, looking at some of those price tags being upwards of specifically like the $35 Brainstormer right now, it can be a bit off-putting and help direct people away from the franchise as well. If you are a Fate fan and like the Fate series, not to worry, we still have ways to play Fate. And that's one of the things we want to look at today with our budget deck. With this budget deck, we are looking at the Pants Choice build, looking at the Ilya level 1 combo into the Saber top end. So we're playing with Saber, we're playing with Excalibur, we're playing with many of the familiar faces from the franchise that we were able to see. All of these cards are from Heaven's Feel Volume 2, which has a little bit of a lighter price tag to it as well. Priced out before any kind of taxes or shipping or whatnot, this deck on TCGPlayer would be under $30. So less than the price of a booster box on release. And even now is still much cheaper than a lot of decks you would try to build with this. But it is also very playable, and you can definitely still get wins in 2023 with this kind of thing. Let's dive on in. Let's look at this deck. So this deck is very bottom heavy in regards to level count. We have a lot of zeros going through with this deck. With that in mind, we also have a very short number of that top end, short number of those number of soul triggers. So if we are triggering choice, we are getting either the combo or pieces that leading up into that combo likely to hand. Because the top end doesn't require a significant number of stock, it's about 7 stock to be able to potentially double combo, which is insane in regards to like the actual amount of damage it can deal. And so get there, we're playing lots of zeros. Looking at zeros, break down some of the zeros and then work our way up. Starting off, we have that Pristine Beauty Saber. This is our Brainstormer, a wonderful addition, again, Heaven's Feel Volume 2, to be able to help with this deck. A Brainstormer with a Saber face. To search Brainstorm, when you play a Climax, you can grant an extra 500 power to 2 different characters in play, so that way you can actually like step over things as well with that. Makes things very convenient. Great mill tool. It'll convert stock into potential cards, because we need cards. We need lots of cards, especially for our end game. It's ditch 3 characters for each Saber use, so we need like a bunch of cards in our end game. So Saber is a good way to help get there. Another good way is with this Rider. This is a salvage Ricky. So it's a pay 1, clock yourself from the top of deck, and then be able to choose any character, Servant or Master, which is all of these characters, from Waiting Room and return it to hand. Also has the neat ability of when damage dealt by this card is cancelled, you may stock it. So it can jump to stock that way. This is a very fantastic card for like direct lanes, especially, to be able to try to either push that soul damage in that lane or get the added benefit of bouncing back and jumping up and filling up your stock faster, to be able to convert that into more cards. Right? Fantastic. Great zero so far. Next up, we have the Smiling Saber Altar. This is kind of like Climax Assurance, which is with Pants almost unbelievable to actually need this in the deck, but sometimes you run into that situation, right? You can clock yourself from a card from hand. It has to be a character from hand to look at cards up to the number of characters you have on stage. So it's an ability to be able to potentially draw into Climax, draw into character you're looking for, draw into something specific. Notably, you can grab cards, so Climax or character works here. Alongside that Saber, we also run the Silver Thread Alchemy Ilya. This Ilya, yeah, so, right, the Katsuki, the on-play, ditch a card, look at 4, choose a master character, and add it to hand. Now, majority of these cards are master, not all of them. We have quite a few servant cards in here too, like for example the Brainstormer, the Ricky, the Saber top end specifically too. So you can't grab some of those, but you can grab a lot of your utility pieces to help get around things and get pieces you're looking for. It does grab level 1 combo, which is mostly what you're looking for here. That recursion of that level 1 combo definitely helps to make the deck flow a little bit better. So there are missed chances that you can have with this card. However, the majority of the cards are master traits, so you're able to get those cards. Next up, we run the Warcry Berserker. This is our filtered card to help get us into our level 1 combo as well. On play, you can reveal the top card of the deck. If it's a Master Servant character, you can add it to hand and discard a card. So that card filter there. as well as a ditch to salvage the level 1 combo from Waiting Room. So you can filter a card from hand and then ditch potentially even what you just grabbed off of that to be able to get the level 1 combo. So just again, that kind of hand filter. You can also ditch a climax as a part of that too. So if your hand is flooded with climaxes, you're able to convert some of those and potentially remove 2 climaxes from hand from this one card. Pretty useful filter here, getting a card that you specifically want to be able to combo and get more cards off of. We also then run the Special Existence Shiro. Effectively, this is our oversize because it's on play, mill 2 cards and giving power equal to the number of characters milled from that. It has an additional ability that doesn't come into play with this deck because we don't run the cards it pairs with. So this is in here strictly for that potential additional mill and the potential oversize that it runs. Realistically, it's the mill more than anything else because it actually can make a difference in some matchups of just how quickly you're able to mill through that deck. Another zero we run, kind of that playing that power game as well, is the Lecture Arena. On play, look at the top card and either leave it there or put it into Waiting Room. So potential additional mill, you can also kind of leave it there for the Brainstorm effect too, so it helps you kind of get an extra check on that potential Brainstorm coming up. It also has the secondary ability of when damage dealt by this card is not canceled, then it gains 6,000 power. So it's a potential 6/5 at 0, which is stepping over everything, but as long as your opponent doesn't cancel. And it's only a base 1 soul, especially if you're fronting into things. With the number of zeros we run, we don't run a high soul trigger count here, so you're likely swinging for 1, which means it's likely going to stick, which means it's likely going to be 6/5. So this could actually contest level 1s as well, and being a 0 is actually slightly beneficial because of the next card as well. The next card being the Top Mage Caster. On attack, it can power pump a character equal to the number of other characters on your field times 500, so an additional potential 2k power with the full field. When this card becomes reversed, you reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's a level 0 character, you add it to your hand. So it's a potential plus and power pump to help win another lane as well. So like you're gonna lose that lane. More than likely, you're gonna lose that lane with that caster there. However, you can power pump another lane to win that lane, and replace this card in your hand potentially off of the top card reveal. Effectively kind of acting like a secondary combo that doesn't require a climax, which is really kind of interesting that you can do that at 0. So we run like 28 of these level 0s. More than likely, this caster is actually going to pop off and get that cards to hand, keeping that hand full, being able to help keep those resources for that endgame. Especially when you pair this with the Reen that we just looked at, pumping that Reen up to a potential 8/5, you are stepping over a good number of cards at 1 to be able to do some pretty crazy things. Last of our zeros is the Staking All of Himself Shiro. This is a 500 global assist for everything else that's master or servant, so every character. It also has the ability to rest 2 characters to give one of your characters an additional soul until end of turn. That feature only really comes into play on like the last turn of the game if you have this in the back row, that you're able to pump up an additional saber by additional soul, which is actually kind of meaningful when we get there. We'll explain a little bit more there. But outside of that, the additional 500 power pump is convenient. It's nice. It's realistically, your back row slots are probably going to be this card here and then the Brainstorm Saber. So like no reason not to run it in that spot as well. So boosting everything by 500 power and potential plus soul as needed. Fantastic, and it's a 0, so you can potentially just add it to handoffs of the caster as well. But that's level 0. That's the majority of the deck, right? That's the majority of the cards, pieces, tools to be able to do what you need to do. It's also really just because, realistically, you're kind of just dirtling to the end game and then exploding your end game, making a massive thing going off, right? It's a really good portion of this deck. But these cards have enough synergy and fixing to be able to make that work, which is really cool. When we hit level 1, we have the level 1 combo itself. It's the Elia. Sits at base 4/5, 2 other characters 5/5, cross turn. If you have that back row Shiro in play, it's 6k. Perfectly fine. Offensively with Climax, that would be 6/5 on attack, back row Shiro 7 attack. So it's like, it's not super strong in regards to power line, but it does quite a bit for you. Because when you have the pants in play, as long as you have 5 or less stock, you can look at the top 4 cards, choose a character, add it to hand. So you're able to effectively mill through your deck, you're able to get a card into hand, and you're able to be decent sized power. For when this deck came out, decent sized power, cross turn. You're not playing the power game with some of the meta decks, right? You're not contesting Alice with this card, but you are able to help mill your deck and get the refresh point you want. You're able to help get the pieces that you are looking for along the way, and you're able to get to that next deck state, get a little bit more compressed deck, get to the ratios that you're looking for in the deck. You have a lot of control over that with this card. It's a very generic level 1 combo. This is kind of like the base standard of what we're looking for level 1 combos, but it does its job. It's easy to get to with the Bonder. You have the tools to be able to mill through the deck. This is what you're looking for in a level 1 combo. It also has the Pants trigger to help get more Pants to hand, so you're able to help try to recur this a little more often. Alongside at level 1, we do run 2 copies of the Simple Question Ilya. This is our Rico effect, right? The ditch card, look at the top card of the deck and salvage equal to that level or lower. You have a lot of zeros, so you're basically going to be salvaging zeros when you ever use this card. Again, it's another hand to ditch out to be able to help maybe filter out cards in hand to get what you need. Realistically, that's kind of what you're going for with this card. It's just another opportunity. It's a master ditch out to be able to make this happen. Going into level 2, we just run 1 profile at level 2. This is our elusive girl Ilya. We have 2 copies of her. When she attacks, if she attacks at level 3, she gets an additional 6k power, so you're looking at 13k power to take on at level 3, which is usually enough power to be able to step over things. But we also run it because she also has the ability of, at the beginning of Encore Step, if all of your characters have been reversed, you can rest this. If this wins board, able to kill off a level 3, and on the cross turn your opponent kills this off, you could potentially pay 1 to keep this on board for another turn. Another way of being able to convert stock into cards on stage, which means cards saving in hand. Definitely useful for trying to convert stock into cards in hand. It's just an indirect way of doing it, but it is a way of doing it. When we hit level 3, we have 2 profiles we're looking at specifically at level 3. We have the trigger off Shiro. On play, marker a card from Waiting Room. Ideally, you're marking Climax, because the next ability is that when at the beginning of your Climax phase, you can pay 1 to put a Climax from underneath this card into your Climax area, so you don't even need to hold on to the Climax in hand for our endgame. So it helps us also to try to help just make sure we filter out Climaxes, filter in characters in hand. So effectively, we don't even need the Climax in hand to count against us for our hand total, allowing us to get those characters for our Saber top end. It also has the ability on attack, if you have a full field, to grant one of your characters +2 soul. That's really nice for the Saber. The Saber itself being the on-play heal. And then when you have Excalibur in play, you may ditch 3 characters. And if you do, you can give a character the ability of, when damage is cancelled, to burn 3 twice. Now this is actually a really interesting thing because you can actually kind of play around with this a little bit, right? You're able to make a judgment call as to where you should put this card, or put this ability. Whether you can stack maybe 2 instances of this ability on 1 card, and then just power up that 1 Saber with the 2 soul from Shiro. So if you're swinging with that lane, swinging at 2, 4, 5 minimum with the Climax in play. If you have the back row piece, you can give an additional soul that can put it up to 6 soul in a single lane. Then all of a sudden, if that doesn't stick, which is unlikely to stick, right? Because most decks are compressed enough that 6 damage straight is unlikely to stick. At that point, you can then, after that cancel burn 3 twice, or in this case, stacking on a single lane, burn 3 4 times. Can be really excessive and can also be like enough to push that through and close out a game. So it's really interesting you can assign that ability somewhere, making sure that you're also being careful of where you assign that and where tap counters and whatnot, because that can also like affect where things would go. But ditch 3 characters to give an ability on cancel, burn 3 twice. That's what you're looking for. Essentially, you're trying to draw in the cancel to be able to stick those just smaller instances of damage through. Essentially, trying to power through your opponent's deck. The one notable choice with that is I do run the choice trigger with that. In part, it's slightly cheaper, right? Running a salvage trigger may actually be super effective here because you're able to spawn it from Shiro anyway, so you don't even need color for that to be a play here. However, I also don't run a lot of red, so there's not really any guarantee that I'll get that red into my clock here. But you can also adjust ratios too, right? You can adjust ratios to whatever you prefer. And if you prefer to have the salvage trigger, have the salvage trigger. I like the choice trigger because I like the additional potential of stock here, especially because I'm trying to keep my hand full most of the time anyway. If I trigger choice here, oftentimes my hand is already full. And so I could potentially filter with that, or I could also be stocking a card so that way I can use that stock to turn into cards later in the game, essentially trying to like stockpile my hand for later, since you have a relatively efficient conversion of stock into cards. So that's typically what I go for, especially because I only need 1 copy of Shiro in hand and then 2 copies of Saber, right? That's an additional 3 copies of that to play with, an additional 2 copies of the Ilya to play with. Those 5 cards with the choice trigger is usually enough to be able to play around with where those decks may lie. With that in mind, this has been the budget deck for Fate in 2023. We are going to have some gameplay of this on Thursday. Next week, we are changing things up slightly. Next week, we're going to have a clock talk on Tuesday. We'll be talking about some of the things we learned from the English conference stream that's happening this week. And then on Thursday of next week, we're going to have a deck video. With that in mind, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube thing. And until next time, have a good one.